In 2013, I moved to London.
Today we are in the great city of London, but oh my god, what have they done to Big Ben?
In 2021, I packed up my bags and I left.
Around a few weeks ago, I officially handed in my notice at my software engineering job, and I have now officially left the city of London for good.
Here in the UK though, things do seem to be doing quite a bit worse.
The Great Reset. You will own nothing and you will be happy.
Seems like London's kind of collapsed, fucked, done out here. All London terms. But at least we have King Charles and his horse-faced wife.
What? You don't know.
You're right. I mean, no disrespect to any horses.
Man, I just feel like the UK is too bad vibes, man.
If you're someone that's been following UK culture, you probably heard the term London's bad vibe, UK's bad vibes. You've heard it so many times. And it's common knowledge that Londoners typically love to complain.
And you guys complain, and I try to make you feel better about it. You guys will be complaining about like the weather, and I'm like, at least you guys don't have guns. And you guys are like, well, we stab each other a lot. It's like,
we just like to complain. We complain about work. We complain about our journey to work. We complain about our lunches at work. Damn, we just like to complain.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
Anyway, my point is, Londoners, we like to complain. Me making a video and saying London's unlivable from a Londoner, it's kind of like, yeah, obviously you'll say that. However, what's going on in London is quite serious. It's not a joke. Rising energy bills, drug epidemic, crime on the rise, house prices and rent prices on the rise, seemingly unaffordable, impossibility of driving anywhere above 20 miles per hour. Seems like it's not a joke. So we're going to analyze that, get into it and see, am I chatting? Am I wassing? Is the Great Reset really here already? But before we get into that, I'm just going to ask you guys to like, comment, share, subscribe. One of my videos not too long ago, the BPL one, did quite well. And I'd like to repeat that. So I'm going to need you guys to subscribe, subscribe. So more subscribers, more eyes on it. The better it does, the more that you get. So if you enjoy this, please subscribe if you haven't already. Share it. Give it around, you know? Send it around, I mean. Give it around. However, let's get into it. So the first topic that I want to cover is house prices. Yes, I know house and rent prices is a common problem that Londoners seem to discuss and always go into. However, it is a very real issue. The size of these apartments that can cost anywhere $1 million plus can be ridiculous, tiny, and typically for Londoners, the location of the property is very important and it makes vast differences to the prices of the property. And also it's important to mention that the rent prices of some of these places, if you can't afford to buy it, why not rent it? But rent is ridiculous because it has a trickle-down effect from the housing prices. However, check this video out and we'll discuss from there.
November 2021 and paid a total of £1,400 a month. In October 2022, their landlord proposed to increase their rent by 27% to £1,775. The issue is not just affecting them, but almost everyone living in their building.
We understood that some people in some flats were having their rent increased by £100 per person. That prompted us to knock around and gather people's numbers, get a group chat together on WhatsApp to discuss our rent situations. And it was there that we found out that people were facing increases in excess of 25%, some as much as 30%.
Daniel and some of his neighbours also have a clause in their leases that limits by how much rent can be increased, and believe the landlord's initial suggestion would breach this. They reached out to their property manager to negotiate the increase and received a new offer of £1,750 a month, only £25 less than the original suggested rent increase. They continued to push back, but have not heard anything new from their property manager.
We have used the time to get legal aid from other organisations that are involved in renters' rights, so we have an idea of what directions they could take, but ultimately we're currently sitting, waiting, nervous to see what they're going to say.
One thing I'll say about this video and that clip there actually is I quite enjoyed the industry and the bravery and the self-determination of that gentleman to fight back against the price increase. However, no surprise, it didn't really make much of a difference. In fact, I think they knocked off £25 to be exact, going from 1775 to 150, which is more or less a slap in the face and a fuck you and how dare you do that.
Oh, you motherfuckers. Okay. All right.
He seems to be fighting it continuously from that clip and from the initial whole video. However, I have no update on where he's at with it. I doubt he's got any progress. And typically that video and a lot of renters videos, they seem to demonize the landlord, to demonize the house owner. But however, they're just subject to what the banks say, and the banks increase the mortgage prices, the house prices. They've needed to recoup since the pandemic, because during the pandemic there was essentially a payment windows, there was loans taken out, and the banks need to make some money back, and the landlords have been subject to those price spikes, and they have trickled down into the rentals economy. And like I said earlier, the house sizes and the flat sizes of some of these overpriced houses are ridiculous. These houses are upwards of £1 million, and they're just not what your mind thinks of when you hear £1 million flat or home and you see that. But the location determines it, I guess.
Cost of housing is just not worth it. I know I just touched on this already. 1-bedroom apartment that's nice in a nice area, because in London it really matters in which area you live, probably be like £1 million. So at least like 500k, like 700k probably. In Dubai, I can literally, like statistically speaking, in Dubai real estate is 25% of the price, so 4 times cheaper. So again, if it's all of these other things plus 0 taxes, plus I can get real estate for a quarter of the price. I can get like this apartment I'm in now, like, this would probably cost me like 200k, 300k, maybe. In London, that would literally, flat like this, and I'll do a flat tour on my channel, this would literally be like £1 million. It's like, why would I spend 4 times the price when I don't have to? It makes no sense whatsoever.
And as you can see, Dubai, that is this place that's meant to be this, you know, vacuousness and this epitome of capitalism, gives you more bang for your buck than London. Isn't that quite ironic? Isn't that quite fearful? I find it strange that Dubai, that is supposed to be this decadence and obscene levels of luxury and wealth, you get more value for your money in a property there than you do here. Thomas or Tomness?
Listen to the weed fishermen, and they love us.
He's got a Finland name. He moved from London to Dubai. I think he's actually moved back now. The irony of that. Anyway, he says there's more value for money in Dubai, and it's odd because we think of Dubai as this decadent luxury place. And I just think what is going on in London, and what inspired me to do this video, was how ridiculous London has become.
House prices are a national obsession, and they make up about half of UK wealth. But what if I were to tell you that house prices in the UK today are exactly where they were 20 years ago?
See, I don't want to be too hyperbolic about the situation, because the rising house prices in London is something that's not new. And as that clip showed, it is something that has been going on since 2004. And what happened around that era was the 2008 crash.
Down 1.7% here, a loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
Yes, the 2008 crash is perhaps one of the biggest hallmark moments in the financial history of the Western world. A boiling point for the greed that we had, and it's very easy for these debates to become Labour, Conservative, Democrat, Republican, blaming on each side, when the reality is
fairy dust. It doesn't exist.
Doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't mean shit because 2008 was a Labour government. The deregulation of the banks happened in the 80s. You can guess who was the Prime Minister there. I don't want to name it because it's too obvious. So I think it's inconsequential who's the Prime Minister, who's the Mayor. In fact, our Mayor is actually a Labour government. A Labour Mayor, I should say, not a Labour government. And it has no difference. If you look at the driving in London, it's so difficult now. So many of their roads are 20 mile per hour roads. Why? Because they're trying to lower emissions. And I find it ironic and funny that emissions have increased due to governments, world leaders overexpanding, overgrowing their capitalist empires. And now they're blaming us and getting us to pay the fee of that with these ridiculous 20 mile per hour roads. And if you want to hit a side road and beat that traffic, even though the route might be slightly longer, but it's quicker to maneuver, not anymore. Not anymore, because there's closures, yes, 6 months. There's been a 6-month suspension on that. However, I feel like that's a ploy by Sadiq Khan to get back into power because there will be a mayoral election in the next 6 months, I believe it's a ploy. So you can see why I said the Great Reset is already here. House prices have gone up. It's more expensive, more difficult to own a home. Renting is almost ridiculous, and buying or having a car seems less and less practical.
Interesting.
And often some people, just to close off this segment, you'll see people in the news, different places, say that the economy is becoming more stable, the housing market is becoming more stable.
Feel excluded from the ability to own their own home. Do you think we're ever going to see an affordability, a sort of rebalance for those who want to buy it and are now being able to do so? Nathan and I talked about it for some time, and we couldn't really see it happening. But what's your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term, the reduction in mortgage rates will definitely help.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're kind of waiting about for a house price crash to happen, I think you'll be disappointed. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And the housing market's proven quite resilient, as we could see through the last couple of recessions, to even, marked changes in economic activity as well as housing market activity. So the correction tends to be in transactions rather than in house prices. I think the government can help. I think, we should be trying to incentivise help to build, not just help to buy.
And I just think, if I'm being quite frank with you guys, they're out of touch with reality, chatting shit, all BS, fuck what they're saying.
Whoa, calm down, Jamal. Don't pull out the 9.
Because there's a genuine reality that the house market benchmark is way too high. This idea that we need to build more homes. If you travel anywhere in London, and people who are from London, put into the comment section, please, if I'm wrong or you've seen something similar. Travel anywhere in London, houses are being built everywhere. New builds are being built everywhere. If you go to the top of my road right now, there's houses being built right there, 8 homes. And what you find is that a lot of them are...
So now, imagine walking down a street at night in one of the most vibrant cities in the world, only to find it's eerily quiet. There are no lights on in the houses because, well, nobody's home. This is actually happening in London boroughs like Camden and Hammersmith. To paraphrase a popular British band from the 70s, pockets of London are looking like a ghost town. And the same exact thing is happening in New York, Melbourne, and San Francisco. Ghost towns are an extreme manifestation of urban renewal, but it does highlight the real bone of contention surrounding the practice: loss of community. Because the essence of why somewhere is desirable to live can't be bought or built. It's true, anti-gentrification protesters should not have used violence to get their point across, but there is some truth when they say, we don't want luxury flats that no one can afford. We want genuinely affordable housing. We want community.
See, gentrification, the ugly manifestation of capitalism and growth and expansion is so interesting, because on the face of it, it seems like a great idea. Go to an area that is underprivileged, under modernized, and build it up, and also attract more affluent workers who, you know, will bring up the area, make it cool, jazzy, open up these independent coffee shop, open up these cool restaurants, which are genuinely for the most part quite cool and have good food and have good vegan options. However, what you're finding is this over expansion, and because the benchmark for these flats, homes are too high, no one's buying them. They're empty. Again, like I said, travel London. Look at some of these blocks of flats. Look at some of these homes. They're empty. And I thought in the 2010s that it was only China, these mass expansion countries, these developing countries that had ghost towns. We have more pockets of ghost flats, ghost areas that existed, but it found itself into the Western world. And that clip did say, you know, it's London, it's New York, it's Paris, it's Melbourne, it's most of the major cities in the world that have got these ghost towns. So when you hear clips and people say, we need to expand, we need to build new homes, we need to build more new homes, what London are you looking at?
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers, Sway.
We're building too many. People can't afford them. The problem isn't just the demand. The problem is the affordability. The problem is the economics that has got us into a place where they are now reached unaffordable levels, and inflation and wages have not matched. It seems like everything that I'm about to say is going to have this one theme to it. Things are so expensive, but our wages aren't matching that. My money's dividing, but my bills are multiplying. It feels like everything's on the rise apart from my pay. Wild, wild times. I think another manifestation, and I would say spawn, of what happens in gentrification, gentrified areas, whether that's Hackney, whether that's Peckham, whether that's Brixton, whether that's Islington, is that you have a great wealth and economy difference between the working class and the middle class, and you will be in one particular pocket of area which is underprivileged, underdeprived. Down the road, and I literally mean in London now, it is down the road, £1 million homes, most of which are empty or flats now, but £1 million homes. So you have that income inequality problem. However, I think that's a mirage. Check this clip out.
Society is divided into two classes, not 3, not 4, not 7. On the one hand, there are those who need to work to live, and on the other, those who have the privilege to make other people work so they don't have to. So long as you exchange your mental or physical energy for a salary, you are part of the working class, the class of people that works. A term which I know is confusing because to most people, working class just means poor. But here, it literally means what it says, regardless of whether the work you do is white collar or blue collar. The remaining few who make most, if not the entirety of their money through rents, speculation, or profit, mainly by owning things like companies or housing, not through their own work, are called the capitalist class, or the owner class. So what if we actually made an effort and used that second definition of class I talked about earlier? The advantage of dividing class along the lines of how you make your money, instead of how much you make, is that not only does it still give you an idea of the how much question, on top of that, you get a great insight into how the economy works, what your interests are, and therefore which politicians it actually makes sense to support. Instead of hearing both sides tell you that they're the ones who really fight for the middle class, and assuming whichever one you don't like is just lying. You will benefit from seeing class in this more practical way.
Only two classes. And when you hear that explanation, it seems to make sense. But gentrification creates a divide and creates a competition which distracts us from the real reality. There's us and there's them. Those who profit off our work. Those who reap the benefits of our taxation. However, when you're in those gentrified areas, it doesn't feel like that, does it? And the reason I placed it like that there is the working class. And I know many people have working class backgrounds, myself included, so I don't mean this in a rude way. But working class makes you feel like it's a poor word, but it's actually those who work for money and those who are profit off those people who work for money. It's as simple as that. Like I said also, gentrification skews that, but gentrification does another thing that blocks us from the reality where it's us versus them. There's us and them, is that it creates a competition in those working class people compared to those middle class people who may be more likely have white collar jobs.
So I grew up in Marylebone, which essentially is a very, very nice area. However, there is a division because there's one side of Marylebone where you have very nice mansions and nice flats with nice cars. That's not where I lived. I lived on the other side. I lived on the other side where it's council flats, it's block towers. Even though it's on our doorstep, we're brought up with a mindset and a belief system that we're not good enough for that. It's easy for anyone to be interested in joining the gang for many reasons. For young people, normally it's to do with money. The other main reason is that belonging. It's having a family, having that brotherhood, a sisterhood. We don't go to private schools, right? We go to just public schools, and that's where it all starts. I didn't run to a gang and say, hey, I want to be in your gang to make money. I tried to go down the proper route. You know, I borrowed some clothes to go to interviews. I applied for 50 jobs when I left school, and no one said yes to me. If society is not allowing me to make money in this way, but there's a lifestyle which could, where do I go?
You see, we're in a society where the job market is ruined. There's also the issue where you see people live down the road from you, have £1 million homes, even though that might not be the reality of their situation. They might not be living in decadence. And you have that opposing feeling in a slightly more deprived area down the road. It will force people into these criminal syndicates, these underground illicit activities to make money. And there was another key point that he said, which is ignored from that factor, is feeling of belonging. Now, it's something that I was going to talk later into the episode, but I'll say it now. That feeling of belonging is lost in London. You heard it in the clip about gentrification as well. The loss of community, the loss of understanding. It's a big theme. Social media, when we discuss that as well, is a big theme. That community is lost in the everyday life. So people feel a community online. Again, I call the people that like me online a community, because what is genuinely lost in real life is community and criminal syndicates. And if anyone's been involved in crime, not saying I have, just have an understanding of it, and a feeling of belonging. There's a camaraderie, there's a energy to it that makes you feel like you're a part of something, and that's something that's lost in London incredibly. And the element of gentrification and the element of socioeconomic differences that can be quite stark when you live in those areas do lead people into lives of crime. But lives of crime need a market. And in order for the market to be there, we've got to talk about the drug epidemic in London. It is vast, and it's not the stereotypical, crackheads in the corner, can I have a pound?
Hello, little boys and little girls.
It's way, way more than that. It is.
Which was quite an eye-opener for me, because I thought, even as a young black guy in London, it's only guys like me that do this kind of stuff. But actually, we're just their foot soldiers. So even our elders, who we wanted to become, they're still the S-man for someone else. The people who are above our elders in the gang, the highest on the hierarchy, from what I understood, this couple, they were massive on the real estate scene in the UK. They were not involved in themselves in the dirty work, but a lot of the money that went going into their businesses came from the money that a lot of the foot soldiers, the youngers like myself, will be making and passing up the food chain. It's scary to think that when you go to a bank, or you're speaking to a lawyer, or you're walking into Greater London and you're talking to someone that's quite high up in business, for example, they have interesting habits on the side or hobbies on the side, because I've seen it with my own eyes.
See, the reason I put that clip there is just so you can understand that there's an epidemic of drugs. There's an epidemic of escapism, really, is what the problem is. And the epidemic of escapism is in some part due to social media, but in some part, people are not happy with the reality that they're faced with. And they feel more and more powerless. And I understand the relationship with addiction is so much deeper than just wealth and inequality. Wealth and inequality plays a part, but your genetic plays a part, your environment plays a part, your relationship to addiction. If you're someone who's on the ADHD spectrum, you're more likely to have an addictive personality, to do repeated behaviors. It can be a source of comfort. Another big factor that people forget to mention when they're talking about drugs, and when you look at a city like London, which has a lack of community, is drug users there's a community of them. It's a togetherness, it's a feeling. It elicits a lot of emotion, and drugs are on the rise. Period, point blank. Drug-related deaths have risen in the UK. Now, it's not a clear indication that drug use is higher. However, it provides a gateway into understanding that it's potentially on the rise, and I would say it's on the rise anecdotally and from the statistics, although you will never be certain from the statistics that drug use is on the rise, drug-related deaths are on the rise. It mostly is related to middle-aged, late 30s, middle-aged men who are dying from deaths related to cocaine and opioids, which just goes to show that there's a need for escapism. The opioid shows there's a misdiagnosis of what's going on, because in London we have a oversubscribed NHS, and we have that all over the UK. So I could just go on here and just discuss the problem after problem after problem, couldn't I? Damn. But like I was saying, the drug use is quite high, the crime rate is growing, and it's not just what you're thinking, zombie knives and stabbings, it's sexual crimes, all of them. And I know some of them have mitigating factors, but what I will say, and they've been saying this for years, but what London has is the problem is that it's all these problems in the epicenter and the capital of the UK, and it seems to be in a boiling point by politicians and world elites who are now becoming more and more brazen in their lack of care for us. And no wonder we have more of a supply of escapism, entertainment, drugs. You think there's any irony as to why there's more drugs available now? Social media is so prevalent. Escapism avoids from the reality that we're in an abusive relationship with capitalism and world elites.
The world to be different. I'd like London to be different. I'm also a big believer in acting on how things actually are, and how things wasn't okay. If London was a person, I wouldn't let him treat me this way.
See, one thing I'll say about London that is problematic, whether it's train strikes, whether it's rising energy bills, is this quote from David Attenborough.
And anything that we can't do forever is by definition unsustainable.
You see, the relationship that London has, the UK has, and the West has, it's all over the Western world, if I'm being honest with you, especially the major cities, the historical cities, is the inability to remove the idea of profit being at the epicenter of everything we do. You see, the reason why homes are being built, even though most people can't afford those homes and they're left empty, is because the money has gone to the contract worker anyway. So it doesn't matter. The reason energy prices are increased, yes, is to do with the war in Ukraine, but it's because the elites have run out of ways to make money, so they've got to squeeze us of the money. Squeeze more money out of us, I should say. The reason why we're driving in 20-mile-per-hour roads, to anyone that's driven a car anywhere understands that is bad for traffic, bad for emissions. Driving at a lower speed, in a lower gear, if you drive a manual or stick if you're American, emits more emissions. It's because it's more ways to squeeze money out of us. See, profit is at the epicenter of everything we do, and London, the financial capital of Europe, ironically only cares about taking money from you. And when you couple that with all these other external factors like gentrification, revealing exacerbating a wealth and economic difference between the working class and the middle class, even though there isn't one, you end up in this microcosm of isolation, loneliness, financial pressure, work pressure, and you end up with things like the gig economy.
That was in London. And Uber's probably the company that's most associated with the gig economy and being your own boss. So my onboarding session, which is like your induction to be an Uber driver, I turned up on the job and was greeted by this kind of hip character in a jeans and t-shirt, a kind of bro, like a tech bro, if you like, with a beard and whatever. Very matey, trying to be my friend, even though he's kind of my boss. And he told us, he explained to us, we were here to make money as an Uber driver. You're an independent business person now, he said. He came out with all this stuff, freedom, flexibility, autonomy. But and for this kind of freedom and flexibility, being our own boss, what we'd sacrificed is our right to a minimum wage, our right to holiday pay, and our right to sick pay, because we were now independent contractors. We were now freedom fighters in this new economy. The Uber experience, what happened is you weren't your own boss. What it was, this model was a ruse to kind of offload business risk from the company onto you as a worker. So you were very tightly controlled by Uber. Friends of mine who I made friends with and interviewed for my book, who worked for Deliveroo and other courier companies like this, it was a very similar experience. They'd sacrificed their workers' rights, which had been fought for by generations before them, their right to holiday pay, their right to sick pay if they got ill, and their right to a minimum wage. They sacrificed these things on the promise of freedom and flexibility. And the only freedom and flexibility we really had in the gig economy was the freedom to turn our phone off.
And I place the gig economy there just to say this, is now we live in a world of this hustle culture where you're not doing enough by working a 9 to 5. Spending most of your hours at work is no longer enough. You have to have a second job. And I'm not knocking no one for having a second job, not one bit. But the fact that is now becoming the mandatory standard in order to live in the UK. And I don't mean live some exuberant life. I mean basically live. It's becoming worrying, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I say London is unlivable. And it's one of the biggest reasons what led me to this conclusion. That the Great Reset has happened. We're in it. You see, I mentioned earlier in the video, driving is becoming impractical. Why would you drive when public transport's faster, even though we have train strikes all the time? Funny enough, TfL and train prices will be going up soon. Why would you buy a home when it's so expensive and at times maybe cheaper to live with your parents, maybe cheaper to even rent? I doubt it really is cheaper to live with to rent actually. But you can see that where I'm going with this. All of a sudden that tagline, you will own nothing and be happy about it, feels eerily true. Feels like an eerie reality. It feels like that's where we're heading. When we first heard that in the pandemic, slamdemic, scamdemic, it felt like a conspiracy theory. Now it feels like a reality that's on its way. It feels like an unavoidable fact unless we do something about it. And I think the problem is, like I said earlier, the escapism that we face in society, the isolation, doesn't allow people to band together. There is no community. How do you band together when there is no genuine community? The best you get is a series of retweets, and man, it falls into the sky. How many times in the black community have we had protest marches about this person being killed, this person being mistreated, and really it was a great march, a great day, and kind of went nowhere. What is happening in London has reached a level of unlivability, but I don't want it to be too doom and gloom, because it seems to be a microcosm and a network that's going around all Western societies, whether that's loneliness, whether that's isolation, crime, drug use. You could name about 5 major cities in the Western world and it would have all fit. I could have put London, I could have put New York, I could have put Paris, I could have put Melbourne, I could have put maybe not Tokyo, but I could have put many major cities. I love how I'm just doing that. What does that even mean? But I could have put many major cities, and boy, it would have fit. It would have made sense. The isolation in London, the lack of community, with the rising cost of everything, leads this to be the less than desirable place. The most worrying thing is, despite constantly being told we're being pushed into a society where we're going to have less and less, And you're gonna love it. No one does anything about it. I hope someone does something about it. Am I chatting shit? Do you disagree? What do you disagree with? What do you think could be changed? What are alternative methods to capitalism, seeing as that it has failed? It has. What are these alternative methods? What do you think? Put them in the comments. I'd love to hear it. If you've got any suggestions for any of our episodes you want to hear me talk about, put in the comments too. I'm excited to see what you lot have got to say. I really want to hear what you've got to say. And I'll see you next week. Peace.
If we're right, people lose homes, people lose jobs, people lose retirement savings, people lose pensions. You know what I hate about fucking banking? It reduces people to numbers. Here's a number. Every 1% unemployment goes up, 40,000 people die. Did you know that?
No.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.